Morning, everybody. Welcome to the third session of the first day. This is Web3, Paving a Path to Identity First. We have David Lee, self-professed Identity Jedi. So let's give him a warm welcome.
So seriously, everybody knows what track they're in, right? Because this is a lot of people for identity. I am shocked. Okay, you can interact or laugh or something or clap. Oh, you guys are going to be rough. Jeez. This is going to be an interesting crowd here. How are you guys enjoying RSA so far, though? Yeah. All right, first timers, raise your hand. Any first timers? Look at that. That's like half the crowd. Second timers? You've been here so many times you wonder why you keep coming to this conference? All right, I'm with you. Okay, yeah. Typical RSA disclaimer that I've never read. I have actually no clue what it says, so feel free to knock it out. I don't know, probably saying something like disclaimer, legal. I don't know. Are there lawyers in the place? I don't know. So, my name is David Lee. I've been in identity for a lot longer than I care to admit, which is why I have all this gray hair. So when I look in the mirror and I go, yes, dang it, no. But I love it. I came into identity, like most people, just kind of stumbled across it. I went to a project thinking I was going to be the best Java developer ever, and then all of a sudden, they drop these Sun IDM books on my desk and go, here's what we're implementing. And I'm like, what is this? And I've been doing identity ever since. Also an avid sports fan. I am a Lakers fan because I grew up in LA. So for all you Warriors fans, yeah, whatever. It's okay. Star Wars fans, hence the Identity Jedi. I love it. There's probably going to be a couple of Star Wars quotes in there. And for you Star Trackers, you can just exit right now because we're not going to talk about that. The last one on there, which you might think is kind of funny, and it'll make sense in a minute, is a pancake lover. I love pancakes. If you can't tell by this nice round section right here, I love them. You're not going to be able to convince me that they're not like the best thing ever, because you can have them for lunch, brunch, dinner, whatever. And cool thing about pancakes, there's a recipe here. They're very pretty simple to make. Most of the time, you have these ingredients in your pantry. Now, my grandmother, God rest her, taught me how to make her pancakes. And if you've ever cooked with your grandmother, who's cooked with their grandmother before? Okay. What is the secret ingredient that's missing on here that every grandmother says?
A kiss.
Love. A kiss. Come on, it's love. You got to put love into whatever you're making. That's what makes it better. That's why you can never perfect your grandmother's recipe. It's love. But it's not the point of this, although we all love our grandmothers. The thing with pancakes is, again, most of these things are in your pantry, right? But they don't just magically appear, because if they did, I'd be a lot bigger than I am right now. But it would be awesome. Imagine you just walked into your house and pancakes just magically appear. It's not how it works. You do have to have the ingredients. That's one thing. You kind of have to have an intent, like you got to want pancakes. And then you got to mix them together. You got to put them in a pan, all that good stuff. The point is, there's something that you need to do. You have to have that intent to put everything together. And at the end of that journey, right, it's been a long RSA night, one too many happy hours. You're like, that last old-fashioned probably shouldn't have had it. So it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you're like, I just want some pancakes. At the end of that journey, you get a nice, fluffy pancake. There's a recipe to that. Switching topics really abruptly. Revolution. When you see that term, somebody, what do you think? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Che Guevara. Okay. There's one. that one is a totally different way than I expected, but it's nice. Anybody else? Revolution. What do you think? Generational improvement. I heard change, right? A lot of these words you're going to kind of think of when you hear that. A major change, something that's disruptive, right? Changing the way you think about something. Doing something completely different, which a lot of the millennials and Gen Xers tell us. So the definition, a dramatic and wide-reaching change in the way something works or is organized and people's ideas about it. So if we think about that and break that down, there's kind of a recipe there to get a revolution. You have a dramatic and wide change in the way something works. So that means something that's currently working needs to be changed. You have to look at something and say, hey, you know what? I don't really know if this is working quite the way we expect it to. Maybe there's a different way of going about it. And that way has to be something that's so different that not necessarily we haven't thought about it before, but it does change the way we currently use that thing, right? So we said instead of sitting in a car and driving it, maybe we sat on top. Why not? It's California. Have you seen what people do around here? Nothing? Jeez, rough crowd. Like, there's a lot more of these jokes coming. So if you guys aren't laughing, I don't know. I'm laughing, so I'll have a good time. So if we look at, we said we want to create a revolution recipe, right? We need a current way in which current system doesn't meet the need. I would dare say, hint, based on the topic of this talk, the internet. Kind of maybe needs to change. We need a new way of thinking about the problem. Why? Because the original way we thought about it was 50 years ago. A lot kind of changes over then. Think about it. If we go back in time and take a picture of this street 50 years ago, I'm pretty sure it doesn't look the way it does now. Probably looks a lot different. And the third part of that recipe is we need like some growing support for that change. There's got to be enough people to say, yeah, you're right. This needs to be different, right? So if I started with this section over here and said, hey, you guys remember that telephone game when we were a kid? You whisper a word, and I say like fuzzy bumpers, and by the time it gets over here, it's like fuzzy bumpers in California did something else, and you're like, what? How did you get that? Anyway, the point is, if I started on this side and we started talking about something, and said, hey, we've got a way that something's going to be different. We've got a way that we want to design a different internet, some different protocols, some things that we want to do, and I get this side to agree with me. They're like, okay. Then we come over here and we start talking to this side, and we say, hey, you know that internet thing? We kind of want to do something a little different. We get that growing support for change. You've now got your recipe for revolution, to do something a little differently. That's kind of what we look at when we see Web3, right? There's a lot of discussion going around here. And to kind of set the tone for the next 30-ish, 40-ish minutes, I want to appeal to that part of you when you first decided to get into a technical industry, cybersecurity, right? Think about the first time you saw a computer or learned how to program. Oh boy, we are not entertaining that chuckle. For me, it was a trip to Fry's. Right? If you're from California, Fry's Electronic Superstore used to exist. And I tell people it was like the Walmart for electronics. It was great. Do they still exist? I think they closed them down. Are they still around? Gone 5 years ago. They're gone? Yeah. Ugh. Still hurts. But for me, when I walked in there and I saw everything I needed to put together a computer, and I took apart a computer, and then I hooked it up, and then it turned on, and I realized this is pretty amazing. I can take all these little components, and then I can do cool stuff with it. Then I learned how to program, and I was like, wait a minute, so you mean to tell me that whatever I could possibly think of, I could make this machine do? That's pretty cool. And for me, it was that aspirational, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I just want to play with these things. I just want to figure out how to make things do cool stuff. Because I knew even then that like technology was going to continue to change how we did stuff, how we interacted. Who would have known that now we'd be walking around with supercomputers in our pockets and turning into addicts if we leave them? Trust me, have you ever left your cell phone at home and then walked out? You start breaking in sweats and you're like, Jesus, I got to go back and get it. There was a time when we always did that. Who actually remembers a phone number? You're lying. I know you are, because I saw the hesitation when you tried to raise your hand. If I asked you to recite somebody's phone number right now, I guarantee, okay, maybe like you're outside of like your spouse or kids or something like that, but for the most part, we don't remember phone numbers anymore, right? It's how much we've changed with technology. So when we look at Web3, right, we look at a definition. It's a new iteration of the web. Incorporates things like decentralization, blockchain technologies, token-based economies, things like that. It's really saying, okay, this thing that we created years ago, decades ago, that when we started, honestly, it was just I needed to send information from point A to point B. It was research scientists, sharing documents, nerds. Don't take offense to that, I don't. We just needed to share some information. That was it, right? Because we didn't want to depend on the postal service. Carrier pigeons suck. Ravens, don't get me started. It just never worked. We wanted to do it faster, quicker. If I could just type this up and I could send it across somewhere, that's fine. That's all it ever was meant to do. And then what happened? We said, hey, we can build web servers, and we can build social media platforms. And now we do everything on this thing of something that it was never quite intended to do. We just wanted to send data, which was great. And now everything's on the web. Heck, I even think this talk's going to be streamed on the web. We do everything on it. But we built a 2-lane highway, literally just to carry data. And then we said, let's put everything on top of it and hope nothing breaks. How did that work? Okay, apparently good for you guys. All right, we're gonna have to wake you guys up. When we look at the Web 3, I like to think of its user first, application second. And what I mean by that is we're actually, when you look at Web 3, considering, hey, there's actually real users on this that need to do something, that need to interact and have these different transactions. And we need to kind of understand a little bit more about those users and what that means as they interact with that data. Again, questions we didn't ask in the beginning because we didn't care. We were just sending data. Now, think about how much information that we process from a user that's on the web. Heck, most of it we give away freely. I guarantee you probably gave your email address and your name and probably a phone number when you signed up to come to RSA. Now, whether or not you gave them the right information, that's up to you. But the point is, you probably did. We collect this information all the time. And when we start to rethink Web3, we're actually thinking about the users, some of us. So here's the interactive portion of this talk. How we interact with identity systems. We're going to start with an example of how we do it in real life. So I'm going to need a couple of volunteers. I promise I won't hypnotize you. It won't be scary. You got me? Right here. Okay. So I need one more. My man right there. Love it. Okay. That was the evil left? Then this is going to be even better. Hey, thanks for the 4-1. This is going to be even better. So let's think about it. Identity says how we interact with identity in real life, right? What's your name, sir? Jen Jarn. Okay, that's awesome. This is the way. But we do an introduction, and I say, hey, my name is David. You tell me your name is Jen, right? And I ask you, just tell me something about yourself. Whatever, some random attribute, anything. What's your favorite color? You're a New Yorker? Boom, he's a New Yorker. And that interaction, he's choosing what his name is, what the information is, and what he's giving to me. He controls that. I don't know anything about him. I don't hold everything that's important about him. That would be really weird. We just have a conversation. He decides what to share, right? Happens every day. We do this naturally all the time. You're at one of the biggest networking events in the world. You're going to meet people that you don't know. When you meet somebody, you introduce yourself, you decide what to share. I'm going to assume most of you don't meet a complete stranger and just go, hey, here's my address, social security number, where I live, what I did when I was 5. You don't do that. Some of you maybe. If that's you, that's cool. The point is, it's your choice. You decide, right? That's how we interact naturally. But what we did when we decided to build identity systems in the web is we said, okay, we're going to do something a little differently. Sir, what's your name?
You can call me Bob.
I can call you Bob. All right, great, Bob. Or Al. So we do this again. So I say, hey, Jen, what's going on, right? You say, my name is Jen, great. And I say, hey, Bob, his name's Jen, and he's a New Yorker. Now if we have an interaction again, just ask me a question.
What's your favorite syrup?
Hey, Bob, what's my favorite syrup? Where? So then I come back to you and say, okay, what's your favorite syrup?
Buttermilk.
Buttermilk. Then I got to tell Bob. Bob saves that. Anytime I want to know information about Jen, I got to go through Bob. How unnatural is that?
Extremely.
Nobody has we don't interact like that. Nobody has conversations like that. There's never an intermediary going, Bob's going to save everything about this person. And now what have we done? I'm relying on Bob for all the information about Jen, which is really weird because if Jen wants to change the information and what I think about him, he's got to go talk to Bob. Why would he talk to Bob? He's talking to me. Because Bob's the what?
Historically, we did it that way because we needed a security reference model that we make all policies. That's Bob.
That is Bob. How fitting. That is Bob, but it's Jen's information. Right. We did, right? When you look at it now, right? Lovely drawings. But we created these applications and we said for each one, username, password, store some information, and we're going to store this identity information. I'm going to create a Bob for every single application that's there. And every time a user, Jen, wants to interact with it, an application, what I'm going to do, I'm going to repeat that process every single time. So now every single application not only has to be its application, it has to be that silo for that identity information, which, hey, it got the job done, no problem. But where did that bring us to where we are today? Good luck trying to remember every single password to every single site and all the other stuff that we're very familiar with. I'm not going to go into all the details. We all know it. It's the world we live in today. Fine, it's the architecture we chose. It's what we've done. We start to look at Web3. It's a little bit different of a promise, right? We kind of move something towards more natural. Verified credentials, which Jen says, okay, this is all his information. He knows his information. And he's going to decide to share and give that information when he chooses to. Why? Because it's information. Not that we don't trust Bob. We love Bob. But Bob doesn't control Dinjarin's information. Din does. It's a more natural progression of how we think about it. And those are some of the things we start to look at Web3 is what does that mean? What does that change for how not only we build applications, but how we interact with these applications? It becomes a lot more natural. We're going to take a case study and kind of break down this example of Audius, which is a streaming music platform that built on Web3 architectures. And what we're going to do is we look at this case study, and we look at some of the architectures and decisions of how they're trying to open up this community, disrupt a market in music, but also make it so that every person that interacts with this protocol and with this platform has control over their information. Quick story of Audius. It's a lot of text. I don't expect you to read it, but they're a music platform. How many of us remember like Napster and LimeWire? Awesome. How many are music lovers? Most people here? About half. Okay. For the non-music lovers, I'm sorry. I'm a music lover. I love this. But the thing that we saw with Napster, LimeWire those days, was that we saw an opportunity that people wanted to share information, specifically music. We won't talk about LimeWire. There's some other stuff on there as well. We won't get into the software stuff. When we look at music and what that did and how that changed and forced the music industry to shift the way they thought about it was that users wanted to be able to share and access this information quickly, right? They didn't want an intermediary in between holding all this information and holding all that music. Quickly, we saw the music industry change and move to the world that we have today of streaming and going forward, but there was still a problem with the overall music industry. For those of you who are big music fans, it sucks to be an artist. For the most part, unless you really get famous and big, you don't make a lot of money off of the creative efforts that you do. So if we all became hit makers today, we're gonna make a hit song, and we say, great, we're gonna go sell this. You gotta go get a label and distribution, and there's all these middlemen that come in and take every single cent of something that you created before you actually get the benefits back, is why we see so many artists going broke. The big story is behind Audius, why I'm taking time on this one, is because they looked at it and said, hey, we want to change that. And we want to connect the artists closer to their fans, make sure the artists get more of the revenue, and they looked at Web3 and some of these technologies to be able to do it. Now, we check out our revolution recipe, right? A current way which doesn't meet the need. They looked at the music industry and said, look, for artists, this doesn't meet the need. It just doesn't allow them to control their music. We saw recently with Taylor Swift, a lot of things that she went to in her fight against Spotify because artists still to this day, no matter how powerful, don't have the ability to really control their music. So there was incomplete rights, layers of middlemen, all these good things. They said, hey, we've got a different way. We think we can solve this using newer technologies, and we can build a platform around it. So here's a high-level view of the architecture. And we're going to walk through this, and I'm going to stay generally high level, but if you're interested, I would suggest you go check out Audius, A-U-D-I-U-S. They've got a white paper that breaks down the architecture, which is really in-depth. And so for all you data nerds like me, it's really good reads, especially if you have trouble sleeping. But you have your artist. You have content nodes. Artists can upload their content to these content nodes. We're going to come back to these a little bit later because a lot of magic happens there. From the content node, fans can stream the content, which is pushed to them from discovery nodes, which pulls from a blockchain-based audience content ledger where index and content data goes out, right? So really simply, artist says, I got a new track. I'm going to upload it to my content node. I'm going to send the metadata to my audience content ledger. Once it's there, the discovery node grabs and says, hey, there's some new metadata out there. We've got artists, we've got tracks. Let's push this out as a discovery node so fans can go discover it. And when they want to stream it, they stream it from the content node that's tied into the artist. The point of this community was that the artist can then make sure that it gets to the fans. They get a part of that. Because it's kind of blockchain-based, and we'll talk about some of the economy behind it, the discovery nodes, the content nodes, Everybody that's involved with this gets a chance to set up a node. It's decentralized, and they can actually join in on how the discovery node gets processed. You can earn tokens there. Content node, you can earn tokens there. We won't get into a lot of the token-based economy. It's actually one of the, I won't say flaws, but one of the things that I think we need to change. But the purpose is once this content gets up there, the artist has visibility and control of how it goes through. And how they do that is this three interaction, the artist, the content, and the fan. So, interactive portion again a little bit. We are now, I'm gonna wave my magic wand. We are now musical artists, all of us. So let's pick a genre. Somebody yell out a music genre. Anything? Classical? Light classical, great. We are going to make the best light classical music track ever in existence. We're gonna create it, we're gonna upload it to our content node. Now, how do we make sure that this just gets to the fans that we want? What Audius did in the background is when you develop a client for an artist, when they upload that track, they've got this thing called content permissioning, where as an artist, we can decide when we upload this track, we want to make sure that the only people that can listen to our light classical banger are people who went to the RSA conference. We're going to be that selective. Only people who went to the RSA. It's only, what, like 10,000 of our closest friends here? I don't know. It's a lot of people. But that's what we decided to put in there. So when we upload it to that content node, behind all of this is public key encryption. So we're going to sign it with our key, but we're also going to tell the content node, here's the content permissioning that we want to allow. The content node then takes that and it uses a process called proxy re-encryption. So we can send out the different keys based on the content permissioning to the fan when they come to actually download the track. There's a little bit more beneath there, but each segment of the track is broken down and encrypted. There's a lot of details there, but I'm staying at this level of this concept of this. This artist then says, this is my track, and I'm going to provide the permissions and the attributes that I want to share. And that's going to be tracked by the network when it gets down to, so I can make sure when it gets to the fans, I know that it's my fans that will get there. Because the content node is going to make sure that they provide the proof before they can decrypt the file. So in this case, if we say it's RSA, however they would do it, give me your RSA badge, show an RSA confirmation, whatever is going to be implemented on that side, but that is the key to unlock how I get access to this track. Fan gets the key, it's encrypted, now they're listening to our light classical music. Everybody's happy. We are now the best artists in the world, everybody's listening to this track, and we're like, hey, not only did we come and learn about stuff, and we had fun, we created a music track. The magic here is on the artist side. That ability to say, this is my track, who I want to listen to it, and how you need to get access to it. Being able to bake that into the actual protocol on the platform that says, whenever I have my data, this is the things that I want around it and who can get access to it, which is something we don't do today. We try to an extent, but for the most part, in our current iteration of the web, your data is given over. And we've tried through regulations to try and help users get some of that control back. It's one of the opportunities we have when we start looking at Web3 and said, let's just build it into the actual protocols in the first place. Let's build it into the platforms and applications we have. Because now we're trusting companies, not evil against companies, I work for them, but we're giving them a lot more power and responsibility than probably they're really aware of, or actually want the responsibility for. Because if we look at what we've seen in the past as far as the data breaches that things go out there, it's a lot. It's a lot for them to handle, but they don't really handle it well. So if we go back to our recipe, we've got a current system, we've got a current way that I think works. Audius looked at the current music industry and said this needs to be different. Artists actually need to get paid for their work. They should be able to look at the derivatives of it and control who gets it. So they had a new way of thinking about the problem. They said, hey, let's look at this decentralized network. Let's look at these Web3 technologies and figure out what we can do. Well, since we're using the blockchain in the background for the ledger, and we're going to create, for the artists, we're going to allow them to give the permissioning and have a key for them to access that data, we'll make sure that no matter where the data is, the artist knows who gets access to it, and that information comes back to them. However they get paid, however they decide to charge for their streaming, that's coming back to them. There's nobody in the middle. Now, from a business standpoint, Audius does have like some network fees that they charge. It's 10%, but most of the revenue, 90% of the revenue goes back to the artist. In this case, not really worried too much about the business aspect, but the implementation they did for the artist and that upload process. This happens every single time they upload to a content node. And artists also have the ability to host their own content nodes, which we'll come back to that, which is nice, but most artists are artists. They're not technical folks. Some are both. And we also see growing support for the change, right? So when we look at Audius, this is a snapshot from late last year that they put out, 7 million monthly users, 250,000 artists, over 1 million songs so far. So it's definitely growing support for this, right? Artists want to be able to do this. This is something that they want to be able to take advantage of. Fans want to be able to get access to more of their music because if artists are therefore getting paid and they feel happy, they're no longer starving artists, they're going to make more music, right? So if your favorite artist knows that they are getting their fair share of their profits for what they're doing, they're probably going to be incentivized to make more music, which means the fans get to hear more music, everybody's happy. Now, there's other Web3 platforms that are out there that do streaming. Audius was just, I'd like their example for two reasons. I love their architecture and what they did, but also specifically, there's some missteps that they took that we'll get into that. So as we look at that, and I say, what does this mean for identity today? It means that there is a change coming. And it's been building for the past 10, 15 years. We do have to figure out how to work identity into the protocols for the internet. We do have to give users a chance to be able to control and access their own identities, but it's gonna have to be in a way that's user-friendly. Because there's a lot of complicated technology underneath here. And we can't expect that just to hand over to users and say, here you go. But when we look at things, the case study like Audius, when they came out to see the rapid growth of users that they had onto their platform, it is showing that there is change coming and that people do want this. And there's tons of other Web3 examples of organizations building out different applications. It's more than a buzzword. Web3 is actually happening. It's moving pretty fast. And we have the chance to actually make up for some of, I don't want to say mistakes, but maybe just oversights we did the first time around. So if we look at this, I start to expand on this and I say, what does this mean for something like workforce identity? So if we look at the Audius example where we had an artist who was able to take this information and say, here's the content permissions that I want for my tracks and the data that I want to put out there. Let's take that same example and say, what does that mean for workforce identity? Think about as a corporation onboarding a new employee and the process of actually getting this information. Right, so with a verifiable credential that an employee themselves could own, they present that to the company, and they decide what data to share. Right now, that doesn't work. You share whatever information that employer asks if you want this job. But a lot of information is not really needed. And that moves a lot of things from workforce identity to more authorization focus. If we think about it, one of the biggest things from identity that we look at is an email address, right? We put you in an Active Directory or whatever you use, but to get that email address at, davidlee@acme.com. But if I'm providing a credential that has the information you need, shared and availability, now I know who you are, and I need to access into your network, do I really care whether or not it's davidlee@acme.com? I want to know that you're an actual user and a valid person authenticated. I've got that from the verified credential. Now what I focus on is actually the authorization of who are you and what do you actually need to do within my system? And it's a different way of thinking about how our applications work and what we're focused on. I'm less concerned about understanding who you are and more concerned about what you can do once you get here. Because as we've seen over the last couple of years, the network is gone. We work from wherever. For most of it in tech, we always have, but now the rest of the world is kind of caught up to it where it's like, okay, fine. Knowing that you're coming from this network or this VPN doesn't really matter. I need to more understand, okay, now that you are, what can you actually access and do? If I'm freeing from the aspect that I don't have to worry about you being centrally in my authentication system that I have to worry about, if you're already presenting a verifiable credential, now I focus on, okay, what am I going to allow you to do with that? Organizations no longer own that employee data. They don't have to focus on storing all of this data and going through there. Now it's just like, I verify this credential and I move on to go to the next thing. If we look at consumer identity, I think we see a bigger change because now the consumer's in control of the data. They can decide what to share. If we go back to our example, Jen decides what he wants to share with me, that he's a New Yorker, whatever else, what his favorite sandwich is, X, Y, Z, and so forth. It's in the control of the user, the consumer. In the Audius example, in their case study, they built a token platform behind it, where artists can earn tokens, fans can earn tokens. There's a token economy there. But that aspect of an economy, we've seen it in different places popping up outside of the Bitcoins and all the different coins, this kind of token-based economy where they involve everybody from the actual consumer to the actual sharer to the actual person who makes the product. Everybody's involved now in this economy and can share in it. It shifts the dynamics of how businesses look at their consumers, of just not straight B2C, but they're also partners. It's the partnership agreement we've always seen. If I am a store and you bring to me 100 new customers, I am happy. Why? That's 100 new people that are going to buy products that I have that I did not have to pay for. It was based on your efforts to bring that in. Now, if I'm able to have everybody share in that, it shifts the way that I look at my consumers and it shifts that relationship. Because now I'm creating an economy that all of us can exist in. Aspirational, yes, and it's been tried and it's building, but it's definitely gaining steam on that area. So where do we go from here? It's not all rainbows. There's some serious issues here. Number one, cryptography is hard. Maybe it's just me, not the smartest guy in the world. But cryptography's been around for a long time. It's a pretty hard concept to explain, right? For those of us who have kind of older, aging parents, I'll take my example, right? Just trying to explain to my mom, when I moved her from PC to Mac, was just, oh my God, the best thing ever. The number of phone calls I got about how do I work this thing, beautiful, done. But still, she struggles with certain things of passwords and trying to explain to her two-factor authentication and where it works, and now she's got to download this other thing and keep on her phone. Not the greatest, right? So now, try doing that and explaining cryptography to her. Well, Mom, you got to have this wallet, and you got to have this public key, and there's some things you got to do. It's over. Good luck, right? I think sometimes what we forget is in this room, we are the lucky few. We love this stuff. We live in this every day. We understand it. Majority of the world doesn't. And if we're looking at how we're going to rebuild this internet, looking at Web3, and if we're moving forward with putting identity security at the focus, we're going to have to find easier ways to do this and make sure that these users can actually take part of it. We don't want to build something that excludes people. We're really good at doing that. Not usually on purpose, just usually by accident. The next thing is the blockchain is immutable, which is usually seen as a good thing, and it is, but therefore anything written on the blockchain is too. So Audius, in our case example, great example, they got hit. They got popped pretty bad. And how they got popped is on their blockchain, they write all their data. It's a decentralized app, smart contracts. So without going into smart contracts 301, basically you take parts of your code, you put it on the blockchain, and it runs. Think about how many programmers do I have in a room? Not a whole lot. Okay, so think of it as many little instructions that you run every single time, and they're all connected. But it's immutable. So once you put it out there, it doesn't change, ever. For those of us who've been around programming for a while, when you ship that first version, how does it work? Exactly. It works, but there's always something. This is what happened with Audius. There was a vulnerability in one of their first apps that was out there, and it went through 2 audits, not found. But when this hacker found it, he or she was basically able to take over the governance process, the voting process of how things worked on there, and say, I am now, have all the votes, send all these tokens to me. Because this vulnerability was sitting on the chain for more than 2 years. Because it was there, you can't change it, it's immutable. So for those programmers, think about it, right? That first version, when you submit to production, it's yours forever, baby. Not going away, it's always there. That's a problem that we have to figure out. The beautiful thing about blockchain being immutable is that we can see in transaction, we can see exactly what happened. It exists always there forever, which is great. But when we make a mistake, it's also there. So if you want to, I would suggest checking out their after report. Spoiler alert, they basically had to use the same exploit that the person did to fix it. Kind of weird. Also, a lot of this stuff is still crypto and token based. And that's because it's the biggest reference example we've seen for like Web3 technology. So most organizations just build it within it. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. Not everything requires a token. Not everything requires an economy behind it. But right now we're seeing a lot of that because, again, it's the best reference example we have. So people are taking it and going forth with it. Now's the time to kind of really get involved, right? When I came up with this talk, the biggest thing that I wanted people to leave with is that Web3 is real and it's being built. We're seeing examples popping up everywhere. There's still a lot of problems with it. It's past that buzzword phase. It's time for here at RSA, some of the best security experts in the world, identity experts in the world, to start getting involved in saying, how are we going to build this and make sure that it lives up to the promise that we want and fixes some of the mistakes in the past? And more specifically, one of my concerns is when we look at where we are today, based on 50 years ago, this field is a lot more diverse than it was before. Seriously, I want you guys to take a look around and just look at the people that's in this room and the different areas that we represent. If we're not careful as we go and build this, we'll make some of the same mistakes. I hear a lot of people when they talk about the future with Web3 and authenticators, and everybody does this. They hold up a phone. Most of us have some kind of smartphone, an iPhone, a Galaxy Note, an Android, for you Android users. Ugh. There you go. All right. But the point is, look, there you go. Hold it up in pride. But here's the point. This is really expensive. And if we think that it's going to be like, hey, this is it, this is how everybody will have an identifier, we're excluding a huge portion of the world who doesn't have access to this and who probably never will have access to this. Right? We've got to make sure that as we're looking at this and we're talking about this and we're looking at these technologies, how are we going to offer identity into this new protocol? How are we going to make sure that everybody has access to it? We need to be bringing those voices and saying that, hey, how do we make sure that it's not just for the elite? I know that's a kind of a dirty word, but I mean, this is a $1,000 phone, right? For those of you who have kids, when you go get your kid an iPhone, they do this, your heart drops, right? Exactly, yeah, except for this guy and his kids. He's like, whatever, just throw it across the wall. Nobody cares, right? But your heart drops. Why? Because this is expensive. So there's a lot to be done here. There's a lot to dig in. There's some working groups. I put together some papers, or put some links to some decentralized application papers there. Look, there's a lot to dig through with this, right? But what I take out of this is when I looked at this case example for Audius, what I saw was like, at the core, we're actually able to build in and say, look, here's an identity. They should be able to control this information, and let's make sure that they control and set the attributes for it and push it out, which is something we have been looking at and saying that was one of the mistakes we made. As the internet took off, we're like, hey, this was always meant to be anonymous, but now it needs to be both. We need to make sure that at least we have some controls for users in their identity. And with that, folks, we're going to wrap. And I would ask that aspirational aspect of you, right? That child, teenager, whatever it is, when you saw tech, that's the part that I want you to walk away from this and go, what is something that we can do with this new technology where we can make it different? For most of us, but mainly for the generation coming behind us. Because that's what we all got in here to do, right? Was to do cool stuff, make something different. And we're actually living in that age right now. So with that, we'll open up for questions. Here comes Bob.
Well, at least you remembered it's you that can call me Bob. So a few of the points that you made, I've had these louder discussions with people in the past, particularly around that building and rebuilding of systems of authentication, right? And we did it because we never thought about the future that would be, and we never thought that, hey, maybe when I get my bank account, I should use something about that and say, if you want to know who I am, go ask them. They'll vouch for me, and then you can understand it's me. And then you can keep all that data private. But to your point about your mother, right, and everybody, yeah, everybody's mother, right, is going to have a degree of unfamiliarity with new technology. I would say that the simplicity is the thing, and not the simplicity of the system, but the simplicity of the user interface,
Correct.
right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people, a decade ago, someone, I can't remember their name, said, complexity is the enemy of security. And I corrected them, I said, no. Complexity of the user interface is the enemy of security. We have computers that handle complex tasks all the time. We should leave the complex task to the computer system and figure out how to design a user interface that is simple enough for the user to interact with and always get it right. Because to your point, you said, we don't want to design a system that locks people out.
Right.
And I would say, you're a little wrong there. We do want to design a system that locks out everyone but the one user.
Fair
And we
point.
have to make it so the system does that reliably.
Yeah.
And so, do you think that the path that you're going down now is that path? Is it going to lock out everyone but the one user? Or is it still going to do what passwords do now, which is lock out everybody except the long list of people who know the password?
Yeah, no, I from the research that I've looked at and conversations I've had, what we want to move to is that it should be easy for that user to go and get their information, but nobody else. And the part of the challenge that I think in here is even just doing this case study, the amount of, I'm going to say effort. It's not necessarily for us folks that have been in the industry, it's not necessarily hard. You go through the white paper, you go and look at it, and the stuff starts to make sense. But it's still a huge barrier to go down and understand and pull like some of this stuff out and what it means. And right now, a lot of this is what they're building on. It's still based on like the edge of what I'll call like the actual technical users go and develop these clients, right? So with the artist example, the artist client, like an artist can make their own node. Yeah, right. Like they're gonna have to go and like hire somebody and say, hey, go create me this node and here's what I wanna do and here are the type of things I wanna be able to do. Now there's an API, there's published, but that's the part that we've got to start looking at this and work it on because there's still so much just to get into this. You gotta understand blockchain, you gotta understand decentralized applications, smart contracts, and then you gotta understand the Ethereum backend. It's just, there's a lot right there right now and we're going down the same path of how we went with the initial internet, which we built it for the nerds, which is cool, and it was a place for us to hang out. But guess what? Our little club now, we opened the doors on it 40 years ago, and everybody's inside. So we got to make sure that we're building it for everybody else too.
And I would say that because of those things you just outlined, someone has failed the build it for simple for the user, right? Because if the artists are the users to put the music out there, the system has to be simple enough for them to do it reliably.
Yeah,
And they're a user in this system as well.
yeah, they are. We had a question up here. Yeah.
Yeah, can you go back to a couple of slides where you said the blockchain is immutable? So I wanted to ask a question. Not too long ago, Ethereum had $50 million stolen by a double spend, and they went back and just changed the code and invalidated all of those transactions. So I think that by itself shows that the blockchain is not immutable. So can you address that where who knows how things progress in the future, what's acceptable, what's not, and, if they can just go back and change the code, then what's the point, right?
Yeah.
And the second one is if you go back a couple more where it says the company no longer owns the user data, how far does that extend, right? So working in incident response and forensics, you get into, hey, I'm doing personal browsing on my work computer, that's none of your concern. Well, yeah, it is, it's on my work computer. How far does that extend? Or employees that say, hey, I worked on this script, it's my identity, it's my data, I own it. Well, no, you don't, right? So how far does that extend? So
Yeah.
I get, you use some third-party provider, Microsoft, Jump Cloud, whatever, to establish that identity. But where's that line between what the company owns and what the user owns, and then the blockchain being immutable, which it clearly is not?
Right. So starting with the blockchain is immutable, it is a problem. So in theory, it's one of those ideas is like, yes, we'll never make a change. You can see everything. You see every single transaction that happens, right? That's the purpose of it being immutable. But as we start to, it's one of those things as we think it out and we see as these things happen, you have to go back and make changes. You have to, right? You're going to have to go back. Now, to keep to the theory, what should happen is when you go through and you make all those changes, and I'm going to invalidate all those things, that should also be in the blockchain so you can see the entire history. I don't know if just completely immutable is going to be the answer. It sounds nice. Me personally, I think it's going to have to be immutable because here's the thing, we're not perfect. Like, especially in software, we move way too fast. We just do, right? I'm of the like, waterfall probably wasn't all that bad. I know, horrible. But we took a lot more time to look at things. Once we got to Agile, we moved so freaking fast, it's like, it's okay, we'll fix it later. Well, when you have things where now we're saying everything's always gonna be there and it's unchangeable, then it's like, well, here are all these unchangeable mistakes that have to go. So, I don't have a direct answer for you, like, is it the best way? Personally, I don't think so. I think we're gonna have to find it's somewhat immutable, and we're gonna have to define what are the areas when we have to go change it and what that means, but how do we still keep the record of what was changed? Because that's the purpose of it, is to make sure that the change everybody can see. And then back to your question about with the organizations owning the data, where I see that going is it's an actual conversation of like, how much data does a business actually need to know? We've never asked these questions, so we're just so used to having the data now. So you bring up incident response, you're like, well, no, this is, you use this employee, so we have access to all this data. And it's like, because that's what we've always said we did. If you're actually looking at an incident response and need to understand what something happened, how much data do you actually need to have? That's the question we have to start asking. Is it, okay, I know your username, I know where you got hit from, like, do I need to know much more about your actual personal, like, whatever personal data? Maybe I need to know what applications you have access to. I don't know, but those questions at least need to be had because we never asked the questions before. We just took what was ever there and said, well, now we need all of it. So where I think it goes is we actually start having conversations about how much data do we actually need to have to provide the actual function we're trying to provide for. I'm trying to give you access into this application. What do I need to know about you? I need to know that you're a verified person. I need to have some kind of trust. I need to authorize what you can do. What information do I actually need to have to do that?
So yeah, I wanted to follow up on the idea of employee identity and ownership there. I think a lot of your ideas work really great in a gig economy where our employees that come in are they're very temporary. They come, they go, things like that. But it kind of bases it on the idea of a worker's persona. When you're doing work for me, you represent my organization. And so as an organization, I need to have some assurances that you are who you really say you are.
Agreed, yep.
So whether that's you simply attesting that I am who I say I am doesn't work, doesn't fly well enough. So would you propose that something like a public-private partnership, so we're not letting Google or Facebook or Microsoft farm all of our data and we put it in some altruistic, centralized, attestable environment, or what kind of environment would you put it in that we can get true attestation?
Right. So I'm going to give you the proposal, and it also has flaws in it, right? Which is part of the fascinating part of this, which I find, because there's always good problems. So when I look at, if I go back and, real quick, we look at audience, I'm going to look at these two nodes, right? Come back. So I'll just stop here on the content. So the content nodes, discovery nodes, right? Those are decentralized nodes that anybody can go out and form and get to the protocol and have, right? And then there's a governance platform on there for how you stand up a new node, right? Now, there are problems with how you handle the governance part of it. That's how they got popped in the first place. I won't get into all that. So there's problems there. So when I look at that, I say, okay, well, we don't necessarily need, because none of us are going to trust a big organization. Government's going to have problems as well. But a kind of a community-driven node implementation where people can go and say, okay, well, we can stand up and verify these credentials, go back and get this information that's there and accessible for everybody, that Google or Microsoft, whoever, could take a part in, right? And maybe there's a little bit more governance structure when some of those big ones that, okay, well, Google's a part of this node and Microsoft's in this one, so here's this data that you can run. If you use those implementations, cool, a little bit more trust. I see something of that nature, but we have to fix the governance problem too of like, how do we secure that and make sure and give trust that somebody just can't come in and redo the governance network and go, yay, here's all these credentials that I'm going to make you trust because I took advantage of your governance protocol. So those are the problems we're having. But I think it needs to be an open kind of community-driven network that can pull from instead of one. I've worked at a vendor, like no matter what they say, except for like Microsoft and Amazon, because they're big enough, they're always going to have an agenda. I mean, that's what they do. Like they can't not, right? So it's a tough one, but I think it's worth the conversation. I think there's enough there that we can get to something. It's probably not going to be completely open as I would. I'm a Californian at heart, like open everything, hey. But I think we could probably use some government, some big tech to kind of come in there and offer maybe like some standard kind of, hey, trusted implementations of this is what it looks like. And if you're connected here, we give you a little more trust than anything else than, me just kind of randomly standing one up on my AWS account that I stood up, right? So.
Okay, then a really quick follow-up then is how does something like OIDC either fall down or support that in this, or do we need a new protocol to support that?
Oof, good question. Hadn't thought of it. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. I think it'd be worth some discussion with OIDC to see where they look at the protocol going forward. I don't think, right now, I don't think there's enough there to do a new protocol. We have hard enough problems getting people to use the protocols we have now. So that's what worries me about a new protocol. I think we have, between the ones we have now, we could extend some of those and use the ones that are already kind of gaining traction and do that. So I think OIDC could be a nice player in helping that go. I think we're out of time. I'm happy to stay over to the side and answer more questions. I just want to be respectful of the next person coming in.
I just think everyone wants to know how you feel about waffles.
Second tier, man.
That wasn't the serious question I had, but
Second tier to pancakes, man. I'm sorry. That was good. I know.